Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. Been wanting to do this episode for a long time. Kyle from Wax Museum, the Wax Museum podcast, one of my faithful listens. He's faithful to produce them, and I'm faithful to listen to him. All about basketball cards, which I love. I won't say what sport I love the most, but basketball is way up there. So thanks sponsors, Topps Panini Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, Concy.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. Who doesn't love basketball cards? So we're going to do basketball dueling questions, Kyle. I know that is in your sweet spot for sure. So welcome to my podcast. I look forward to being on yours. Really enjoy your Wax Museum. So welcome to the show and hit me with your first basketball shot.
All right. I appreciate it, Dr. Beckett. So I like to think about what could be sometimes because we always talk about what we've got in front of us. So if you were Panini today and having a very limited basketball in, how would you utilize some of the previous licenses with baseball, with Pinnacle and some of those brands and select in a way that they haven't done so already? How would you do that for basketball?
You're saying talk about some of the things they're doing in football and baseball that with especially with the full license in basketball,
right?
And they can and a lot of energy in that category. They could do even better
with the hurdle that they don't have the basketball history if they want to give a nod to the past.
Well, in my perfect world, if I were the czar of the industry, I'd say, hey, Panini, make a deal with Upper Deck and Topps to sub-license or lease some of these and do a rev share. It'd be great for the hobby. If you're going to have just a single licensee for each sport, then frankly, I think it would accrue benefits to both. Because Upper Deck has some great classic cards from the 2000s and in the early 90s and stuff like that as well. They have a great hobby history in basketball, and Topps as well, some of their chrome stuff and all that. But actually, it might be Fleer. Who knew back in the day when the now remaining card companies were divvying up these broken, bankrupt brands and sub-brands, that they would really have value. And Brian Gray is laughing all the way to the bank, picking up Leaf, and he's done well with that. So that's what I like.
Pro Set recently too.
So the brands have value, and what you're saying, and now see, Upper Deck has brought back the arenas. Well, why couldn't Panini have done that? I'm probably giving you too long of an answer, but excellent question, Kyle. Okay, I've probably got 500 different Scottie Pippen cards, and nobody wants to look at 500 Scottie Pippen cards. 500 different even. And maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but it's a lot. What's the ideal number for me as a serious collector to keep, in your opinion, as a major basketball guy? How many do I keep and how many do I get rid of or put back into the float, and how do I do that? Do I keep 50 and sell the 450 to some Scottie Pippen person? There's a few of them that are really good, but most of them are good cards, but not great cards. So Scottie Pippen, 500 cards. People just get not Zoom fatigue or Instagram fatigue, but just looking at cards fatigue, that there's only so many Scottie Pippens they want to look at. Now, I collected some Scottie Pippen. I had a friend that was one of his agents at one point, and so I thought maybe Scottie will come over sometime. Scottie didn't even want to look at his 500 cards. He might want to look at 50. So I thought, if I kept 50, what do you think is the ideal number to be able to show a collector or even an interested fan some representative Scottie Pippen card? And then what do you do with the others that are the $5 or $10 and even less valuable cards that are still interesting?
I would say you got to go with 54. Because we're going to do multiples of 9, because we're going to put them in binder pages. Now, the rest of them, unfortunately, you're just not going to win getting rid of the rest of them in lots. And I think that's why people get stuck with so many of these cards. And I'm not even base card bashing. It's just really hard to do something collectively with them other than just giving them away. And everyone says, we'll give them to kids. Kids don't want Scottie Pippen cards. Kids probably don't even want Michael Jordan cards. A lot of them don't. They want Curry. They want Durant. That's an issue. So unfortunately, I would put them in my dime box at a show, but they're going to sit there forever. And I finally got tired of moving that thing around. I think that's why we end up stuck with them. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I definitely display about 54 of them.
Okay. I take your divisible by 9, especially for the 98% of the cards that are vertically oriented.
Yes. Yeah. That's another thing.
Okay, that's a good answer. I was hoping to get a miraculous answer that would have some wisdom, but you're raining on my parade.
I get a lot of binder questions too, and I still haven't found a great solution. So I've got 3 or 4 styles of binders, and I'm just going to roll with those.
Okay, your turn. Your question for me.
Okay, so I want to know, I've talked to a lot of different people, collectors. I've talked to the co-creator of Chromium Cards, Jim Esker, and I ask him about the greening on chrome cards, and I hear all different theories. What, after all these years of looking at these cards, and let's go with Finest and then the early Topps Chrome Basketball, what is your theory? Why are my cards turning into the Incredible Hulk?
I'm not a chemist. I have a PhD in statistics. There has to be some oxidation or something that's in the coating. Basically, most of these cards are laminate, that they react to light, they react to humidity. Again, I'm not a chemist, but it's troubling. And one of the things we thought about when we were doing BGS is how do we retard with the kind of the UV protective resistant slabs, because it's a scary thought. Mm-hmm. If something is exposed to whatever element, whether it's light or cold or I don't know. I don't have the answer, Kyle. I wish I did. And one of the things I really like to do is help the hobby have a positive tone. There's a lot of negativity associated with that. Really frustrating. So I'm hoping people that are smarter than me in chemistry can figure out what's going on. And if they do, let's try to avoid that problem.
Right.
Hermetically sealing them, I don't know that's certainly not right for every card. So I wish I had a better answer for you. And I wish it wasn't even a problem. But yeah. Okay, my turn. You're real big on NBA Finals oriented memorabilia and cards and things like that. To what extent do you fault Charles Barkley and Karl Malone for having no rings? Do you take them down a notch?
They get a partial pass in my book because I'm such a Reggie Miller fan.
Okay.
So Reggie's in that list too. He had the unfortunate timing of running into Jordan, young Kobe, Prime Shaq, and then eventually the Pacers ended up running into LeBron, even though Reggie was gone by then. So I feel like I've been a victim of those guys always winning titles. I don't want to knock them down because of that. And I think the narrative's going to change a little bit now that we're moving into where everyone just controls where they go. But I don't want to fault the guys, especially from that era. Now, this era, it could be a little different because, and I'm not saying I ascribe to this right now, but maybe in the future, the narrative will be, well, if you didn't push your way onto a super team, you were doing it wrong. Whereas back then, that was not so much the case, although Charles did move his way into some locations, and he seems to forget that when he's talking on TNT a lot.
When he went to
Houston, yeah, and he wanted to get out of Philly too, I believe.
Like I said, and then Malone going to the Lakers, which didn't seem right.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, my point is give Reggie high marks, Pacer through and through.
There was a period where it looked like Reggie might come back and ring chase with the Celtics after he retired. And I wouldn't have been able to stomach that. So thankfully he didn't do that.
I'm a purist. I want, Roberto Clemente, always a Pirate. They stole him from the Dodgers, but still always a Pirate in the big leagues. Yeah, it just seems to me the hobby wants to put extra value on people that are winning championships, but there's just so much you can elevate your team.
There's only so many rings to go around. And when you got dynasties and guys winning multiple rings, we got to cut these guys.
But for whatever reason, Giannis now is in that megastar rank, I think. And Luka, he's going to have to win a championship, and he can't do it by himself. He can get to the first round of the playoffs.
Now, I want to see what Giannis ends up doing, though, and I'm not trying to put a footnote on his ring or anything like that, but I think just in general, anyone that can repeat, regardless of the situation, that's going to put him on that level. And by the way, I love what Giannis did this year. He surpassed all of my expectations.
And the deck will be further stacked against him next year. Because they rally to the other teams rally. Okay, that's what we got to beat. We've got to have an antidote, and we've got to have good matchups. Okay, your turn.
Okay, we all know there's all sorts of pack pulled stuff. Your publications covered all the cards we could get out of packs. I want to know what's your favorite basketball food related release.
Like Bell Brand? Back with the Lakers.
Could be Scott's potato chips, the Carnation milk panels, the Carvel ice disc.
Yeah, probably the milk panels. That's the kind of stuff when I went to the National every year, I would be looking for things that I could put in the book. And there were some football milk panels and a lot of Phoenix Suns, unusual shaped kinds of things. And so picking them up, and Hank Rezis and Steve Taft and some of my buddies. Again, I was a price guide guy. I wasn't a basketball card collector for those decades. But they knew that I wanted a type card of anything. And I wasn't looking to get it for free, and I wasn't looking to pay a premium, and I wasn't looking for a specific guide. I said, I'd like to acquire a card, one of those so that I could physically show it. There's some people who say, well, just take a picture of it. But in those days, I'm still a collector. I'm going to get the card. And it really came in handy when we started doing BGS, because then I had my library of cards of just a sample from each set in most cases, to where people say, oh, those have a waxy film on them, because they really were the panels of milk cards. So yeah, probably the carnation stuff like that. That was fun. Okay, my turn again. In their prime, Big O, Oscar Robertson against Jerry West. They go 1-2, 2-1. Big O was from Indiana. I went to middle school in West Virginia at the same time Jerry West was at WVU.
And we talked earlier about guys that got the ring and didn't. Jerry got his, but certainly not the amount that he should. At the same time, Oscar, that's tough. Had Kareem and won his, and Bob Dandridge and some of those other guys. And actually we saw him recently when, we were watching Giannis win the title. If I had to pick one though, man, I'd probably go with Jerry West. It's hard to tell. The thing was, if you remove Gail Goodrich from the equation, or Elgin Baylor, or some of these guys that he was playing with, the guards, and forwards, not so much Wilt, and that was later on anyway. If you remove those guys, how does he adapt to that? Not that he's any worse of a player, but how does he adapt? And I guess I'd probably have seen more West stuff to feel comfortable that he would do that. I don't know. That's a tough question. I know the Oscar people are hating me right now.
I was going to figure out whatever one you took, I could take the other one. So sentimentally, it's Jerry West for me, because I grew up, all the kids in my neighborhood idolized him, and he was truly Mr. Clutch, really amazing. But Oscar Robertson, my sense of him is the opposite of Russell Westbrook, in the sense that he filled up the stats. He was a stat machine, but he wasn't hungry like that. He just played the game and was dominant. When he had the ball, it's like he had the ball. Nobody could get through him, around him. And he was quicker in his younger days, but it just seemed like he could almost score at will. He was still a team player, and he still had these gaudy stats, but it wasn't because he wasn't grabbing for the stats. Same thing with Jerry West. I think those guys were classic. They wanted their team to win. And Jerry West, if the team needed a basket, he was going to get it. And Oscar, same thing. But you don't average a triple-double if you don't have all the tools. But I think if somebody said, I think Oscar could have done more in terms of the rebounding and assists. The game looked so easy to him when I would see him play, because I am old enough to have seen him play. So anyway, so we can't lose on that. We're not going to resolve that. They're both great guys. The interesting thing is one is black and one is white. And I think basketball has done a great service to America by helping with integration. So I'm happy about that.
The man in the